president and founder of the Center for a Democratic Iran. Welcome to the program. So obviously Iran's in the news. We saw in that clip. Overall, how would you assess the way in which Iranian foreign policy has developed in the wake of the Iraq invasion?
Well, Iran has a bad habit of meddling in other people's affairs, and our organization is involved in making sure that the future of Iran is going to be a democratic one, and where all our citizens can enjoy equal rights. And
certainly, no doubt, Iran is pursuing its own state interests. Some would say it was George Bush's attack on Iraq and the failure of that occupation, which has, as an unintended consequence, given Iran greater regional status than it had before.
The attack on Iraq by the Bush administration turned out to be a big mistake. And Iran is naturally trying to take advantage of that. After the war, the 8-year war with Iraq, Iranians weren't happy about the damages caused by the war. And also, we had several provinces that still haven't been recovering from the war. So Iran's interference in Iraq via the militia, the Shiite militia, is an act of war against the Iraqi people.
Mm. And yet, the American foreign policy doesn't seem to have a particular problem with that. The government that the Americans are backing in Iraq is indeed the government which is using the militias, most of their force, against the Islamic State.
Yes, this administration in the United States is not in favor of putting boots on the ground. And therefore, the president has been very careful to walk a fine line. And I think the United States should have done more after the Bush administration left. And the Iraqis need the support of a great power like the United States to be able to combat what has happened to them so far.
So there's talk of the United States arming some tribes in Iraq. Is that something you think they should do?
I think they should do more. But under this administration, I don't think anything's going to be done.
Mm. By more?
By more helping and putting...
In what ways, though?
Well, by helping as far as air power is concerned. You can't have air power without boots on the ground. So this administration, in my opinion, is waiting for the president to finish his term.
So in other words, you're advocating a second invasion?
I'm not advocating any wars in the Middle East.
But I'm sorry, I thought you just said that by more help they would need more air cover. The air cover on its own wouldn't work, and therefore there should be boots on the ground. That sounds like a second invasion.
Well, the boots on the ground should not come from perhaps the United States if the people don't like it. But there's much more things that we could do to help Iraqis and not lose grounds on the...
But isn't that the problem? That that's exactly what the Americans are doing at the moment. They have an air war. Indeed, Britain has an air war in Iraq at the moment, although it's not massively talked about in the British media. And there are somebody else's boots on the ground. They're actually Iranian-backed militias' boots on the ground.
Yes, but if the Americans helped, they'll walk out after the job is done. Iranians won't. So the danger is if you let Iran come in and play a role, then things will be more chaotic.
Okay, so just so that we're clear, there should be boots on the ground. They shouldn't be Iranian. They can't be American. So who could they be?
I think the Kurds could help. The Sunnis and the Shiites have to get together. And until some of these things happen, I don't think there's a good chance of having an Iraq that will have lasting peace.
I mean, obviously, you're an opponent of the current Iranian regime, although I believe you were an ambassador for the Shah. Do you think that it is the case that it is the lack of democratic credibility in the Middle East, when we look at America's key allies like Saudi Arabia, which has undermined its claim to be a supporter of democracy in the region?
Well, I think anyone in the Middle East, if you go to them and say, the present regime that you have, how would you like to have freedom of press? I guarantee you most of them would say yes. Freedom of expression, freedom of religion. These are the qualities of a democratic system of governance that I recommend to all countries in the Middle East, because look at the Western democratic countries, such as Great Britain or United States and Australia and others. They're all living fantastically. 6 million Iranians have left this regime, who is an alternative, and have lived in democratic nations, and they're doing extremely well. They have no problem adapting to a democratic regime. I see Arabs, I see Iranians, I see Jews, I see Muslims, I see Catholics all over the United States living in peace and prosperity. I, for myself, for instance, after the Shah was gone, they confiscated all our properties. And so we went through a very, very hard time, you know.
So what do you make of the recent comments, and we saw them in the clip there, about the nuclear talks? Are you happy that there was an accommodation reached in the end with the Obama regime?
I don't see a complete deal. I think what's going to happen is that Iranians will renege. You see, Iranians can never be friends with the United States, because the minute they say, we are friends with the United States, we have embassies, we have a relationship, then for 37 years they've said America, the great Satan. All of a sudden they have to go and explain to the people that this great Satan is now a good Satan, you know, or a friend.
Although that sentiment among certainly a sizable number of Iranians predates this regime, I mean, partly to do with American behaviour in the 50s and so forth, doesn't it?
Well, we've had two chances of having democracy. One was about 100 years ago, and Iranians tried very hard to get rid of the monarchy. And after that, the Muhammad Ali Shah, which was a Qajar king, he was against a democratic government because he felt that his powers are going to be eliminated. And then the Russians also helped to overthrow this democratic movement. And then in '53 we had another chance, and the Mossad did, and that's, you know, with the help of the Americans,
the CIA operation to get rid of him. Yeah,
the Shah was back on the throne, and we had a.
Well, it's a difficult history, but I'm afraid we've run out of time there. Professor, thanks very much for joining us. And now moving on, we're going to have a look at what's been trending on Twitter.